Hi, for social studies today, we are doing the state of Kentucky. So we're going to go ahead and learn about Kentucky today. Let's look at some fast facts. Its nickname is the Bluegrass State. It became the 15th state in 1792. Its capital is Frankfort, and its biggest city is Louisville. The state bird is a cardinal, and the state flower is the goldenrod. Let's talk about some history. People first came to the land now called Kentucky at least 14,000 years ago, possibly following mammoths and other large game that migrated here. Thousands of years later, Native American tribes, including the Cherokee, Shawnee, Chickasaw, and Yuki, lived on the land. It wasn't until 1774 when the first permanent white settlement was founded. Pioneers James Harrod and Daniel Boone founded other settlements in the following year. For a while, the eastern section of the present-day Kentucky was considered part of Virginia, but in 1792 it was declared its own state. The western part of Kentucky was later added in 1818 after being purchased from the Chickasaw tribe. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Kentucky was officially neutral, yet 140,000 of its citizens went to fight in the war. Why is it called that? Most experts think that the name Kentucky comes from a Native American language, but they don't agree on which one. It may come from the Wyandot name from the area, Ka-tenta-te, which can be roughly translated as Land of Tomorrow. It's also possible that it comes from the Shawnee name for the area, Kaintucky, which means at the head of the river. Or it may have been derived from the Iroquoian or Mohawk word Kentucky, meaning among the meadows. On the left, we have the state flag. On the right, we have state flowers, the goldenrod, the state birds, the cardinal, the state animal is a gray squirrel, and then we see the state quarter, which has a horse on it. Geography and landform. So in the pink, that's where you see Kentucky. Kentucky is bordered by Indiana and Ohio in the north, where the Ohio River creates a wiggly boundary. It has West Virginia, separated from Kentucky by the Big Sandy River, and Virginia to the east, Tennessee to the south, and Missouri and Illinois to the west. Kentucky contains 6 different geographical regions. Farthest east is the mountain region, a part of the Appalachian mountain chain. Forest, high ridges, and narrow, V-shaped valleys are here, plus the state's highest point, Big Black Mountain. This is also a land of coal fields. 10,500 square miles of coal are under this area, known as the Eastern Kentucky Coal Field. Go west the horseshoe-shaped Knobs region, where erosion has created hundreds of knob-shaped hills called Monadnocks. Part of Daniel Boone National Forest is here. In the middle of the Knobs is the Bluegrass region, named for the bluish-green grass that grows there. Its hills, sinkholes, caves, and springs were all created when the local limestone weathered or broke down. The Pennyroyal region, also spelled pennyroyal, is named after a type of mint plant that grows there. Spreading west across the center of the state, this area is rocky with trees, lakes, and lots of caves. One of these caverns is Mammoth's Cave, the world's longest. It stretches over 350 miles. Surrounded by Pennyroyal is the Western Coalfield region, a hilly area overlying 4,680 square miles of coal. John James Audubon State Park, named after the famous artist and naturalist, is in this region. The Jackson Purchase in the far west, which was added to Kentucky in 1818, is lowland filled with ponds, lakes, and swamps. Let's talk about some wildlife. Little otters. Black bears, bobcats, red foxes, minks, and river otters are common Kentucky mammals. Gaze at the sky and you might see a peregrine falcon, bald eagle, mountain bluebird, Kentucky warbler, or northern cardinal, which is the state bird. Check the ground and trees for reptiles like the 6-lined race runner, broadhead skink, or eastern corn snake. Amphibians such as the Kentucky spring salamander or the Jefferson salamander hang out near water. The tulip poplar, which is the state tree, is native to the eastern United States, as is the Kentucky coffee tree. Other native trees include red maple, sassafras, northern red oak, and bald cypress. Looking for colorful native wildflowers such as wild columbine, purple coneflower, dwarf iris, and the endangered Kentucky lady slipper, a type of orchid. Natural resources. With almost half the state covered in forests, it's not surprising that Kentucky is one of the country's top 3 producers of hardwood. It's also the 3rd largest coal producer in the United States, thanks to its vast natural coal fields. Limestone is another top resource. Some fun stuff about Kentucky. Lots of famous people come from Kentucky, including President Abraham Lincoln, Mildred and Patty Hill, who wrote the tune to Happy Birthday to You, and boxer Muhammad Ali. You can visit the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, where the first of its now famous baseball bats were manufactured in the 1880s. You can't miss the place. Outside is a 120-foot tall steel bat. Fort Knox is home to the United States Bullion Depository, an underground vault containing one of the largest gold reserves, estimated to be about $260 billion worth. Eastern Kentucky is home to so many country music stars that a stretch of highway was renamed the Country Music Highway. And now we're going to watch our Kentucky video.
Hey yo, I'm DJ Pigeon and I'd like to introduce y'all to our national bird. Make some noise for Barry the Bald Eagle, our state-by-state chauffeur.
That's right, y'all. What up, what up? Do you guys feel lucky? Because we're headed to the Bluegrass State, good old Kentucky. What's up, MC Card, Kentucky State Bird, the Northern Cardinal?
What's up, Barry? We got a lot more than fried chicken down here, and if you haven't been, you should come here soon. We're rich in history. Our land's first boy by Daniel Boone. We got a lot of rivers and the Appalachians, and the largest deposits of soft coal in the nation.
That's amazing. Coast to coast, state to state. Gonna tell you about a place and what makes it great.
So just fly with me.
Fly with me, fly with me, come on, fly with me. Well, Card, Kentucky rocks.
Sure does, Barry. We house a lot of the nation's gold in a place called Fort Knox. And if you're looking for a place to chill, the Kentucky Derby happens in our most populous city, Louisville. Now, Louisville's also famous for baseball bats. Our capital is Frankfort, and that's a fact. And if you like horses, give Lexington a whirl. The city likes to call itself the horse capital of the world.
Wow, I like horses a lot.
Kentucky's home to the world's longest cave system at Mammoth Cave National Park.
Cool. Coast to coast, state to state. Gonna tell you about a place and what makes it great.
So just fly with me.
Fly with me, fly with me, come on, fly with me. What else can you tell us about your beautiful state, Card?
Our state flower is pretty. It's called the goldenrod. We're the bluegrass state because we have a lot of bluegrass. But it's actually green. And our state music is called bluegrass too. And we like to sing. To the south we border a state called Tennessee. To the west we're bordered by rivers, the Ohio and Mississippi. And to the north we got Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And we like all three.
Coast to coast, state to state. Gonna tell you about a place and what makes it great.
So just fly with me.
Fly with me, fly with me, come on, fly with me. Coast to coast, state to state. Gonna tell you about a place and what makes it great.
So just fly with me.
Fly with me, fly with me, come on, fly with me. Very cool. Thanks for the insightful rap.
Wanna see where Daniel Boone trailblazed this state?
Sure.
Let's fly to the Cumberland Gap!
So that ends our reading on Kentucky. I have a book for you guys to listen to about Abraham Lincoln, since he was born in Kentucky.
Cannot remember when I did not so think and feel so. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free.
Abe's Honest Words. The Life of Abraham Lincoln. In the slave state of Kentucky, deep in the wilderness, young Abraham learned to hunt for nuts and currants, and fish for trout and bass, and tend to soil and seed. He learned sorrow at age 9 when his mama died, but he found great joy with a loving stepmother who encouraged him to read and learn.
Abraham Lincoln is my name, and with my pen I wrote the same. I wrote in both haste and speed, and left it here for fools to read.
The family moved deeper into the wilderness, to the free state of Indiana. Panther screams and prowling bears filled Abraham's nights with fear. He had just a mite of schooling, yet he loved words the way his papa, a master storyteller, did. He stuffed books inside his shirt. In between splitting wood and plowing, he stood in the field and read. He read some books so many times he knew whole parts by heart.
The things I want to know are in books. My best friend is the man who'll get me a book I ain't read.
Another move, to New Salem, a village in Illinois. The long, lanky boy was a man now. He ferried people and goods down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. In between the pull of the pole and the splash of the water, he listened to hunters spin tall tales of a mighty marksman,
Half man, half alligator.
and sailors describe giant mosquitoes that could kill a man. He heard lawyers tell how they used words to gain justice for ordinary folks. He heard preachers quote from the Bible,
"A house divided against itself cannot stand."
He stored these different voices in his heart and wove them into his own words. The long, muddy Mississippi River brought Lincoln south to New Orleans. He walked on cobblestone paths and along canals, past flowers spilling over lacy iron balconies. He saw men and women in fancy clothes, eating fancy foods and sipping wine. French, Spanish, and English words filled his ears. But a hideous sight shattered his joy.
12 Negroes, chained 6 and 6 together, strung together like so many fish upon a trot line, being separated forever from their childhood, their friends, their fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, from their wives and children into perpetual slavery.
Lincoln worked at many jobs: farmhand, store owner, postmaster, surveyor, rail splitter. Wherever, whatever, he always had a book in hand. Elocution, grammar, mathematics, biography, history, poetry, plays.
Upon the subject of education, I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged in.
America was growing. Farmers needed new waterways and railroads to ship their crops. Everyone needed better education. If he became a lawmaker, he could help people get these things. So he ran for the Illinois state legislature. He spoke in public squares and country stores and hayfields.
I am young and unknown to many of you. I was born and have ever remained in the most humble walks of life. I have no wealthy or popular relations to recommend me.
He lost the election, but people liked what he said and how he said it. He ran again. This time he won. He ran 3 more times and won. He became a lawyer. His clients praised Honest Old Abe, the lawyer who was never known to lie. He didn't like the nickname Abe, but it stuck.
Resolve to be honest at all events. And if you cannot be an honest lawyer, resolve to be honest without being a lawyer. Choose some other occupation.
Nearly 4 million black men, women, and children were enslaved in southern states. Lincoln thought slavery a great evil. If he became a United States Senator, more people would hear him speak out against it. In speech after speech, he reminded people that slavery did not fit with the ideals of the Declaration of Independence.
As a nation, we began to declare that all men are created equal. We now practically read it, all men are created equal, except Negroes.
He lost the election, but again, his words got much attention. People felt he spoke from his heart. In the next 2 years, tension over slavery grew between the South and North. Lincoln ran for president and spoke out against this evil practice, won this election. But a month before he took office, 7 southern states left the Union. They formed their own government with their own president. In his first inaugural address, Lincoln reminded Americans that they were one people.
We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies.
On April 12, 1861, Southern troops attacked Fort Sumter, a federal fort in South Carolina. Lincoln knew he had no choice now. The North had to fight the South to bring it back into the Union.
I hold that the union of these states is perpetual. No state can lawfully get out of the Union.
Families were torn apart as husbands, fathers, and sons went off to war, many never to return. Many Northerners worried that Lincoln did not have the skills to lead the nation in this terrible time.
He's too backwoods.
He's unpresidential.
Tells too many silly jokes.
He's had too little experience in government.
If I were to try to read, much less answer, all the attacks made on me, this shop might as well be closed for any other business. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing so until the end.
Lincoln believed that true liberty could not permit slavery. He decided to use his wartime powers as commander-in-chief to end slavery. In the 3rd year of the war, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It freed over 3 million black men, women, and children, and called for black men to join the Union Army.
In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free.
Most white Northerners opposed Lincoln's proclamation, but he stood firm.
I never in my life felt more certain that I was doing right than I do in signing this paper. My whole soul is in it.
The war dragged on. Lincoln grew sadder and sadder as more Americans died. He went to the Gettysburg battlefield and again reminded the nation why these men had sacrificed their lives.
77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
The Emancipation Proclamation had freed slaves only in the states and territories that were in rebellion. Lincoln wanted slavery ended in the entire nation. Most white lawmakers did not want this. He called them to the White House to convince them of what he knew was right.
The moment came when I felt that slavery must die, that the nation might live.
Finally, they agreed. In the 4th year of the war, victory seemed close for the North, but Lincoln felt no joy. Hundreds of thousands of men on both sides had died in battle. The country was deeply divided. Many Northerners wanted to punish the South for starting the war. Southerners were furious that the Union Army had destroyed their cities and homes and crops. Could the nation ever be one people again? In his second inaugural address, Lincoln shared his vision of how the country could heal itself.
With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds.
The South finally surrendered. The job of healing the nation began. But Lincoln was not there to help. An assassin's bullet ended his life. But his words were there, to guide those who chose to remember.
It is for us the living, rather, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
So, this ends our lesson from Kentucky, but from Kentucky, one of the most famous presidents was born there. Very interesting. I hope you enjoyed it.